Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the statistical fantasy land, you could even call it outrageous propaganda, that purports to indicate that no matter how many mass migrants, whether it's millions or tens of millions or whatever, no matter how many mass migrants come into Western countries, that they never cause an increase in unemployment. Now you look at that. I mean, like a junior high school kid in economics class would go, "Hold on a minute, that doesn't sound right." And of course, it doesn't. So the statisticians, again, the propagandists, they churn out this stuff, and they use a different data sets. They rotate different sets, intermingle data sets, and then separate data, cherry pick data sets in order to put this out. So now, according to the statisticians in the United States, even when something in the order of 200,000 illegals, or all up, something in the order of 250,000 new arrivals were coming into the United States every month. That's 250,000 a month were coming into the United States. And that was every year for 4 years. That in spite of all these arrivals, the unemployment rate never increased. And magically, the number of new jobs that the economy was allegedly creating was approximately equivalent to the amount of people that were coming in, give or take. So now that's astonishing that just because 250,000 people arrive in that month, that magically 250,000 new jobs are created, or more than 250,000, so that all the school leavers and college leavers and local citizens in the United States and the 250,000 a month coming in spite of all that, unemployment never increased. It stayed within a very tight range of like 4.1 to 4.3%, and that the new jobs, the amount of new jobs created was just astonishing. I mean, wow, where did all these new jobs come from? Well, no one seemed to know. When it came on when it went to that, the statisticians started to be rather vague. Oh, it was it's in nursing homes, it's in pizza delivery, or but that doesn't seem to bear, because when you start crunching the statistics, at least what they put there, and start teasing and separating out the intermingled data sets they use, that they do to obfuscate what's going on, then you start to see, no, these numbers just aren't adding up. No, this is bullshit. Now, this is borne out recently in the United States, where given there's been a sharp decrease in new arrivals into the United States, the border's been shut down. So that's cutting down the inflow of people by 50,000 a week, 200,000+ a month. Fewer people are coming into the United States. So, when the statisticians put out the employment numbers, they claim that the numbers are going to be, as in new jobs created in the American economy, are going to be sharply less. So the amount of new jobs created in the economy are a half or a third or even a quarter of what was being created last year. There's the claim that Americans are getting the jobs now that otherwise illegal immigrants would have got. So, but how is it the amount of jobs has declined so sharply, and declined in line with the decline of mass migrants, or illegal migrants in this case, to the United States? How is it that some illiterate peasant from South America, who is illiterate in their own language, let alone English, is somehow responsible for not only taking a job but creating another job? So the claim is that for every migrant coming in, every one migrant coming in, 1.5 new jobs are created. Well, where are these jobs created exactly? Well, again, the statisticians don't seem to know. It's just vague references to somewhere in agriculture and so on. So now, if you look at the total amount of people supposedly employed in agriculture, and you look at the proportion of people that each year supposedly have gone into agriculture, then it's about 3 times the number of agricultural workers in the entire United States. So these numbers, again, just don't add up. Now, the most recent claim in the US is that instead of 150, 160,000 new jobs created, there'll be something in the order of 75,000 new jobs created in the US. I think it's this month, or I think it's this calendar month. Now, this is sort of half to 2/3 or more or less than the corresponding periods last year. So were these new jobs that were supposedly being created, that were supposedly, there's this desperate shortage of people, why, when the mass migration stops of illiterate peasants from the third world, it's not the rocket scientists or people opening up businesses, it's not that, it's illiterate peasants from the third world, why does the amount of jobs explode to be just in line with those people coming in? But as soon as those illegals stop coming in, that the amount of new jobs created declines substantially, if not dramatically. So these aren't numbers that reconcile with any form of reality that I'm aware of, or ever heard of. Now, it needs someone to go a much more deep and detailed dive into the figures than I have, but based on certainly my understanding of statistics and numbers, you don't have that sharp a drop in jobs. The amount of jobs should say, new jobs being created should be roughly the same, give or take, as it was last year, or the year before that even. And this sort of, even coming away from like the COVID era rebounds, or something, even putting that aside, should the amount of jobs be falling by 50, 60, 65, 75%? Amount of new jobs created? Well, of course not. So we're looking at a miscorrelation here. Either the claim that all these new jobs are being created by these mass migrant arrivals, either that was completely false, and thus the unemployment numbers we were fed of being 4% or so, that's false, or it's false that the amount of jobs has declined. I would argue that the amount of jobs that were supposedly created by the mass migration never existed in the first place, or was involved in phantom fake jobs that weren't jobs at all. Now, what do I mean by phantom and fake jobs? Now, in Australia, the unemployment rate stayed, roughly around the, 4.3, 4.4%. No one believes those numbers, by the way. I don't know why the government keeps publishing them, but in spite of 500,000 new arrivals over the last couple of years per year, 500,000 arrivals a year, the government's claiming that there are slightly more new jobs being created each year than the amount of migrants, mass migrants coming into Australia. Now, how that is quite beyond me. It can't be true, but nonetheless, that's what they're claiming. So they've been claiming that something like for every mass migrant that comes into, or about 1.3, give or take, new jobs is created. That's just a bald-faced lie, in my view. Now, if we start to pick apart the Australian numbers, this is for last year, so 2024. If we pick apart the Australian numbers, we find something that's quite astonishing, that of all the jobs created last year, 85% of them were for government. Now, this is all government. It's not just the federal, it's federal, state and local government. 85% of the jobs, that's taxpayer-funded jobs, nearly all of which went to the mass migrants, Indians, entire new departments, particularly of government, are just all Indians. There's not a single white face to be seen. Pretty much every new job in government appears to go to an Indian or an Asian. I mean, it's insane. So 85% of the incoming migrants were given government jobs. 85%. I mean, can you even believe that? But that's a bill that the taxpayer has to fund. Now, 10%, give or take, 10% of the jobs were to charities, NGOs, that sort of thing, quangos, and so on. Now, so how many jobs actually were for the private sector, the productive, wealth-creating private sector? 4%. 4% of the jobs with the private sector. Can you believe that? That's staggering. So if ever there was an indication, a clear indication that mass migrants are not needed, that's it. That's it. Those government jobs, on the whole, are well paid. They're average wage or better. Now, there are plenty of Australians, local-born Australians that would pull back teeth, the kill to get those jobs. but they're not available to white people and local. They're only available to brown and black people and racial minorities and lesbians and whatever. So there's a huge ideological social justice play, or whatever you want to call it, or finding something for the mass migrant to integrate. It's a faux form of integration, but it doesn't integrate them, because the Indians in particular, and a lot of the Chinese too, they believe that if you're dumb enough to give me your money and not give jobs to your local people, that's your lookout. But don't think I'm going to be one of you. I'm not. I'm here to take, not to integrate, not to give, not to share. I'm here to take. And if you're dumb enough just to give me all these things, well, more the fool you. And that's very much their attitude. So if the Western governments think this causes, the Indians and so on to integrate, no, it does not. Far from it. Now, I suspect something similar is going on in the United States. I don't know, but there's, as well as direct government employment, there's also labour hire firms, and this is widely used in Australia, where thousands upon tens of thousands of people are employed through these labour hire firms, which is a way of the government giving jobs to these people, the mass migrants, but not keeping it off book, if you like, and not employing them directly. So they can say, no, the amount of government employees has stayed the same. Well, no, it hasn't, because of all these subcontracting labour hire groups that are being used, a lot of them to scam mass migration as well. So when we look at this, look at this in totality, all Western governments, British government, Canadian government, we're all claiming that for every mass migrant coming in, one plus, another job, or 1.3, 1.5 jobs have been created. When clearly it's not. No matter how you slice it or dice it, artificial bullshit jobs are being created to plug these people into. They're not needed. It's not needed in any way. They're not needed here in the West. Now, on the other side of things, there's a claim, well, we need them because, the cafes can't operate, and the pizza delivery, the DoorDash, and all this sort of stuff. But the reality is that not many people are actually going into that. If you're looking at 4 or 5% is the number going to the private sector, then the amount of mass migrants going into that, as much as they're more visual out on the street, driving around and so on, truck driving or whatever, there's not actually that many of them going into that in the overall scheme of things. So, that's a lie as well. So we're being fed, is where I'm going with this, we're being fed, a series of massive statistical lies. The unemployment rate is either far higher than they're letting on, which I think is more the case. There's a lot of people I know in the, the executive level, and they just can't find work, they're telling me. That's what they say. So there's clearly high unemployment at that. Now in the mid-level, things like, I don't know, a maintenance manager or somebody like that, a senior technical guy, technology field technical operative, those, say between 1.5 and 2 times the average wage, that sort of category. The amount of applications that people are, put out adverts, they're getting now 200-300 applications for those sort of jobs. That didn't used to happen. Now the entry level jobs for things like labourer or even the local grocery store, they were running adverts for people to like sweep the floor in the grocery shop and everything like that, and they were struggling. So the manager was telling to find anybody. Even getting one applicant was a struggle. So when we look at this unemployment in the professional area, say 80% of the average wage and above, unemployment there I think is quite high, certainly from what I've seen. And down the bottom end, that is what jobs that pay such shit money that people can't afford to even live in a caravan or a trailer park or something like that. That's more difficult to find people for. But that's not an expression of low unemployment. Far from it, in my view. So again, coming back to this thing that in America, as the rate of mass migration declines, according to the statisticians, the new jobs being created also declines, and the two can't be the same. The two can't be true at the same time. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.